Right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Cambridgeshire County Council's Constitution and Ethics Committee. The County Council allows filming and photography at its public meetings, so please feel free to take pictures and use social media during the meeting. Can I ask, though, that everyone present turns their mobile phones to silent or vibrate whilst the meeting is taking place? Please be aware that this meeting is being live streamed and that a recording of the meeting will be available to view on the County Council's website. There is no fire alarm test scheduled for today, but if the alarm does sound at any point, I will adjourn the meeting and we will all make our way downstairs out of the main entrance and turn left. The muster point is at the far end of the building. So the first item is apologies for absence and declarations of interest. Can the Democratic Services Assistant please report on any apologies? Thank you.
Apologies have been received from Councillor Levine and Councillor Polton is substituting, and Councillor Nettinger and Councillor Clark is substituting.
Thank you. Does any member wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest? I see none, so we'll go to item 2. We're being asked to approve the minutes of the meeting, which was held on the 4th of September as an accurate record. Can I ask whether any member disagrees with the accuracy of these minutes at all? Nobody? Okay, so I see no objection, so I'll sign them as approved. Item 3 is proposed changes to the Constitution. Can I ask the Democratic Services Manager, Michelle Rowe, who's joining us online, to present the report, please? Michelle.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully everyone can hear me. As members will know, the current Constitution allows a maximum of 5 motions to be accepted for debate at Council. This often results in a rush to get motions in and waiting lists for future Council meetings. So the Constitution Working Group has been considering different ways of bringing in a new system that's fair to all political groups. What we've done today from the meetings with the Constitution Working Group is outlined 3 options for your consideration. The first option has a maximum of 3 motions for the largest political group and 1 each for all other political groups. The second option reflects the proportionality of the council, and you will see that we have included that, the current proportionality in the report. And the third option is limitless, unlimited. So it allows members to submit a motion without any limit. I need to draw your attention to the requirement for a member intending to give notice of a motion to consult the executive director. And that's to make sure that when it finally comes before the monitoring officer, that the motion itself is in order. And we've devised a template to help members do that. One simple example is the fact that if a member is asking for something that costs money, they need to identify where within the current budget that could be funded. The other clarification that we put in is if we receive notice of 2 or more motions of a similar subject matter. And as you can see, we have put in a process to address that. But if we cannot get agreement, then the proposer of the first motion is the motion that will be that will go forward. And finally, because all 3 motions are likely to result in all 3 options, are likely to result in an increase in the number of motions submitted by members, the working group supported a proposal for a word limit, both for motions and for amendments, and suggested that the speeches for motions should also be reduced, which would mean that the mover and the seconder of the motion would have 3 minutes, but other members would have 2 minutes. I think at this point, Chair, I'll stop because I think this is probably the major item on this report, and I'll cover the other items once the discussion has taken place.
Okay, thank you very much, Michelle. Any comments or questions from members at all? Councillor Wells and then Councillor Dupre. Sorry, Councillor Howard after Councillor Wells. Thank you.
So on 2.2 with option 1, that gives us 7 motions potentially. Option 2 appears to potentially give us 20 motions. But option 1, 7 motions, would they definitely be going through regardless, or would they be chopped for time reasons?
Well, Michelle, could you come back on that question, please?
Yes. So the proposal to reduce the speeches applies to all 3 motions. At the moment, we have a limit of 5 motions. And if you get a motion that is of particular interest to members, you can have often 20 plus members wanting to speak. So I think it's important, given that we want to increase the number of motions, that we do need a time limit.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Wills?
Not totally sure. Just taking option 1, there are potentially 7 motions. Does this mean, assuming 7 have been put up, there always will be 7-1, or is there going to be a cut-off for whichever comes in first?
I don't think so, but could you just clarify that for us, Michelle?
Yeah. So 7 motions, they will. So effectively, what option 1 does, and all the options do, is take off that requirement for a member, after the December meeting of council, to get their motion in for March, because if they don't do that, the waiting list is full. So it gives the groups time to prepare their motions. There's still the deadline for submitting a motion, obviously, that needs to come in, and all the checks need to be made, and the monitoring officer needs to confirm that the motion is in order. But the reason why the time limits apply to all 3 motions is we are increasing the number of motions, and if you therefore increase the number to 7 and everyone has the chance to speak for 5 minutes, it could lengthen obviously the meeting itself. And it was the view of the working group that there should be some that whilst the issue of the number of motions needed to be addressed, and all 3 motions result in an increase, that we needed to balance that with the time limit for speeches.
Okay, just at this point, Emma Duncan would like to comment. Emma.
Yeah, I don't know if this is what you're getting at. No, there won't be a time limit on the total number of motions. So if we have 50 motions, we'll sit there until they're done on option 3.
So I hope nobody's suggesting that they want to submit 50 motions, but that would be helpful. Councillor Howitt.
I think this is the 3rd time we've had this discussion, so I'm not going to repeat every argument from before. There are some things we agree with and some we don't, but let's just take that as read and focus on what's before us. I'm and my group are in favour of option 1. We've put that consistently. I think Lorna and the Lib Dems initially weren't sure, but I believe you're supporting it now, and I'm grateful. I think in principle that increases the diversity and accountability in the council, and as I understand it, you will support that. You will support that, and thank you. In terms of the wording, I'm not going to formally propose amendments. I'm going to look at Emma and just see what she says. But I think we've said consistently that this is not for each political group, but proposed by each political group, leaving open the option of a seconder from a different political group. And therefore, instead of saying for the largest political group and for all other political groups, I'm suggesting it might say proposed by the largest political group and proposed by other political groups, which then explicitly leaves open the opportunity for seconders to come from different groups. And on the last sentence in 12.2, we all would acknowledge that this solution isn't an exactly proportional one, and therefore, 1 seat up or down somewhere probably doesn't affect this in truth. And so I think it could possibly say reflects significant changes in political proportionality, or perhaps alternatively, it could say at her discretion, just to signal that this is not an entirely proportional way of dealing with it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bywater.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And Michelle, and to the working group, thanks for all the hard work. I can see that there's been quite a bit of thought go into this, and actually I'm very supportive of the 2-minute limit, the 800 words, and the template, and also consulting with the executives to understand, are these motions deliverable from a finance point of view, etc. So yeah, so I guess my only thought process here, and I still not made 100% decision here because I'm open to listening to what people have got to say, but I'm sort of favouring more option 3, where just, we have an unlimited, people use their common sense within their own groups, and you will quickly, I believe, dishearten full council if you put 50 motions in, because you have trouble keeping people in the meeting at 2:30 in the afternoon when there's another 30 motions to crack through. So let's get real here. There's got to be a level of common sense if we go for option 3, which I would like to think as grown-ups we could do that really. But yeah, I'm open to listen to the debate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lawrence.
Thank you, Chair. I just quickly actually want to respond to a couple of the comments Councillor Howitt's made. First and foremost, I think your point on it saying groups proposing, leaving it open, seconding is a great suggestion. What I would say is, as a Lib Dem, I have not been asked to vote in any particular way of this. I've come to this with an open mind, and I'll be making my decision based on discussion today. I've got 2 questions. I'm going to start with one which hopefully is the easier one to answer. Did the Constitution Working Group, when deliberating this, did they consider, particularly with reference to options 2 and 3, the potential of putting a time limit for the entirety of motions? I know other authorities where they will say you have an hour and a half for motions. Was that something that was considered? That's my first question. I'll let you answer that and then come back.
Michelle will.
Yeah, so I did raise that. It's a particular issue, I think, when you have evening meetings, because obviously members have been at work all day and then they come to the meeting, and a lot of councils that have evening meetings do have a guillotine for motions. But I think the working group felt that we could probably manage it within the time available, and there was no need for such a restriction.
Thank you. It's really useful to know that it's been considered. I mean, I'm not sure I have a particularly strong view. I think there's pros and cons to it both ways. So thank you for answering that one. The other one is, so I've been chatting with Councillor Wyatt, who put a proposal forward to, and forgive me because this is her idea and she's very good with numbers and algorithms and things like that, which is a bit over my head. But so I've got in front of me what she suggested, which was different thresholds, numbers of councillors for a group, and how many motions that would come from it. So if I just read the main example from her suggestion would be up to 5 councillors in your group, you get 1 motion, up to 15, 2, up to 35, 3, more than 36, you get 4. Lots of ability to tweak those thresholds as you wanted. But I think that I almost would have welcomed it being on the papers today, because I think there's definitely some merit to that suggestion. And again, I'm just wondering if this was something that came to the working group and whether they considered it.
Hey, Michelle?
Yeah, I think, Chair, to be fair to my deputy, I think that was a calculation that he did. I think that's right, Nick. But I think we in the end didn't bring that suggestion to the working group. So the suggestions we brought to the working group were effectively option 1 and option 3. But in order to give members a rounded picture, we added option 2, bearing in mind that if unlimited motions applied, then the fact that you have a significant increase in motions due to proportionality was also should also be considered. But we didn't include the option that you suggest, Councillor Demery-Homan.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I guess my question from there, is there anything that prohibits us as a committee from considering that as an additional option, or should we stick to what's in the report in front of us?
In terms of amendment, because I think it probably would constitute an amendment, that can be taken with the consent of the chair if it's a minor amendment. I think that in terms of that, it probably would be. So that would be something that could be debated and considered now if members wanted to take that forward and make the change to that option. What might be helpful is for members to have a bit more debate, find out which option they're coming down on, and then if it is option 2, have a debate over changing the proportionality requirements on an amendment.
That's right. There's nothing to stop if members want to move an amendment. You're absolutely free to do that, and we can debate it. But Councillor Martin's next.
Thank you very much, Chair. And obviously, like I said, we have discussed this before in the working party, and so it will come as no surprise to many in this room the comments that I'm about to make. For me, the reason that we're sat here is trying to work out a better way of doing motions is twofold. One, it is currently unfair that a party or a group of individuals are able to put in very, very quickly some stock motions that clog up the whole system. As far as I'm aware, March's meeting is already fully booked already with motions, and I'm sure if we asked our stat officer, we would also be told that there are motions leading up into the next few meetings as well. That's a concern, obviously, because then we're not able to bring forward specific motions that are relevant to the time in which we're having the meeting. So having a limit is a huge issue. The problem with what we have in front of us, option 1, is that it says it is proportional, but it really isn't, because my group and Reform get the same number of motions as the Green group and the Labour group, although we're twice the size. But then also, if we had twice as many, it then causes an issue for the Lib Dems because they're over 3 times the size of us, which is where we get option 2 from. The thing that I come back to with the Constitution is that it has to work for every scenario. It can't just work for the scenario that's in front of us today, because anything could change. For all we know, with all the defections we're seeing in Huntingdonshire at the moment, we could see half the Lib Dems leave. We could see, a huge change in the Labour group or the Conservative group or a Reform group. We could see any change. But what we are putting forward with option 1 or 2, well, option 1 in particular, doesn't work for every scenario, because my group could get an extra 10 members somehow, somewhere, but then we only get 1 motion every meeting, which isn't proportional, isn't correct. So I'd be concerned in putting forward option 1 because it doesn't work for every scenario that we could possibly have. Option 2 is proportional, but I think having 20 odd motions is unrealistic. And to be fair, I'd quite like to see the Lib Dems come up with 11 motions, because I'm sure you'll run out pretty quickly on things that we can talk about. And that's where I come to option 3, which is what I put forward in the working group. By removing the limit, we then have a scenario where groups will only put forward a motion if it's really needed. We're not going to see a lot of the filler motions that we have at the moment. In the last couple of full council meetings, I can probably count on a couple of fingers how many motions we've had come to us that were worth the debate that we had. And we have, to be fair, we have had 1 or 2 really good debates, but the other ones, they do feel like the administration trying to fill up as many spots as humanly possible, and quite understandably, if I was in their shoes, I'd be doing the exact same thing to stop some really difficult debates potentially taking place. So I think that having an unlimited motions is going to make sure the quality of the motions are going to be high, because we're not going to want to sit around debating 7, 8, 9, 10 motions every single meeting. We're not going to want to be here until 6 o'clock. I think it's fairly self-regulating. It works elsewhere. We've seen it work elsewhere. If it becomes an issue, we can absolutely come back and rediscuss it. But I can always guarantee, Chair, that we'll have 1 meeting where we have 10 or 11 motions, and none of us will ever want to do it again. That's both from a member's side and an officer's side. So I hope that self-regulation would work. So therefore, I don't know if you're seeking proposals, Chair, but I'll be proposing option 3 as the option that we go for. Thank you.
Do you have a seconder for option 3? Councillor Bywater, thank you. That's great. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Let's say I agree with a lot of what's been said. I have slightly less confidence in our in in that sort of regulation of meetings, I think given we have filler motions now, it wouldn't surprise me if we have meetings where we do end up with it being more than one meeting where we end up with more motions than we would perhaps like. But I do also agree that there are that like not all of these options apply to every proportionality. And if things were to change, then we might want to change. But I would say we can make those changes if we need to. If we have a drastic change in the makeup of the council and we feel it's really wrong, this committee can make those changes if needs be. I do like the idea of Councillor Damry-Homan's suggestion by Councillor Wyatt that we have that full proportionality across the year. I would be happy to support that. And the only other point I would add is that I'm glad we're not having a guillotine added. It's in other authorities where there is a guillotine, you often end up with debates cut short. And I think one of the good things about this council is we do get to have those debates, and we've got the time to do that when we have a full day meeting.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wishing to speak at this point? Lorna, Councillor Dupre.
Just thinking about these options in turn, I was slightly surprised by Councillor Howitt's perhaps rather previous thanks for assuming that we were going to vote, that I was going to vote for option 1. I'm not sure that I am, because firstly it isn't proportional, which isn't quite so bad as the fact that it doesn't cover a scenario in which the largest group on the council isn't actually part of the administration, which is, I think, another flaw. So it could unintentionally, unless you have to change it every time for every circumstance, give a majority of the largest number of motions to a group that is not part of the administration of the council. And I'm not sure that that was what was intended, particularly if it means that the groups that are the administration of the council only get one motion apiece. I'm not convinced by that. I'm also of the view that if you tell people they can only have X number of motions, they will put those motions in. And it is arguable that you might get more motions submitted the stricter your criteria are, because people are going to be determined to get their due. Option 2, I'm slightly more convinced by, in a way. I think there is equally the problem that people will seek to fill, particularly for the smaller groups with the smaller number of motions, will seek to fill those. I think it's quite likely that the largest group currently wouldn't be seeking to put 11 motions into every council meeting. I find it hard to see that happening, but I can see that the groups who have fewer motions to their allocation would actually want to take them all up, and that might also lead to unnecessary motions happening. I have said frequently that I think that an unlimited allocation of motions to everybody is probably the best thing for democracy, and ideally I think that is what I would like to see. I think there is a question about how that ideal translates into practicality, and the reduction in speaking time does help, but I also think that groups will not take up all their allocation if they will just not pile in with, the largest number of motions possible. We're not going to see dozens of motions every meeting. I'm convinced of that. I think the idea put forward by Councillor Damry-Homan on behalf of Councillor Wyatt is actually, I think it's a shame that we hadn't had a chance in the working group to discuss that as an option, because that might be not strictly proportional, but as close to proportionality as you can, while still abiding by the idea that there should be some openness around it. I think that might have been a useful conversation to have, but equally, I think it also has the problems that apply to limiting motions anyway. So I think we have a difficulty here in that we are being asked to vote between 3 different options. And being the Liberal that I am, that probably calls for some kind of vote by proportional representation if we're going to get a sense of what everybody wants. And I do think it's really important that we get the outcome that best reflects the consensus as far as we can get it across the council as a whole. That's what we are here to do in the interests of democracy. We've had a proposal for option 3, so I think we may be bound to take that, but I'm wondering whether that is slightly premature and whether there is a discussion still to be had about whether or not to consider the suggestion from Councillor Wyatt, albeit delivered vicariously, and put that in the mix or not. And then whether it is a good idea to try to discount options that the vast majority of us feel uncomfortable with, to narrow down the discussion a little bit more, would be my suggestion. But clearly the chair's in charge, and I just put those in for suggestions as to how we might go forward.
Thank you, Councillor Dupre. I think what we'll do is just seek a little bit of advice on the next steps forward with this about voting. As Councillor Dupre rightly said, we have an option 3 proposed by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Bywater. Councillor Demery Holman, you've indicated you'd like to talk about an amendment. Sorry, Michelle.
Chair, I just wonder whether it is worth Nick's just worked out the proportionality based on the option from Councillor Wyatt, I think. Hopefully we've got that right. You're talking 5 motions a meeting and based across the year on proportionality. And I just wonder whether it's worth Nick explaining the numbers to give you some understanding of if we've got what you're suggesting right.
That would be very useful. And then Councillor Howart's indicated he wishes to speak, so we'll take Councillor Howard after that. Thank you.
I think you have to decide about the order of voting, but just to help you, I'll formally propose option 1. We'll see if I get a second to. I completely accept that. From the last working group, perhaps I did generally misunderstand where the Lib Dems stand. So I'll just put the 2 points why there's a case for it. Number 1 is it's about managing the number of resolutions. I fully respect what Ross has said, and that's a different point of view. But I think we've seen over long meetings, and there's been a consensus but in the informal discussions between some of the officers and between some of us, that managing it would be a better way of proceeding. People take their own view about that, but that's been talked about for quite a while, and we wouldn't be even debating this if that wasn't the case. The second thing is, and I look to my Lib Dem colleagues through you on this, you run this council now, you're the majority group. The motions are a democratic pressure valve. They give groups other than the ruling group a chance to help set the agenda in a way we don't largely have elsewhere in the council's business. And therefore, anything that is strictly proportional is squeezing out the other groups to some extent. So I fully accept that the Lib Dem group, if they decided, or certain members decided to support option 1, that it's not a proportional answer, but it is one given the context of the entire council that in some of our discussions has felt to be justified. And I do ask the Lib Dem colleagues to reflect on that.
Councillor Howard, Nick, did you want to take us through your numbers?
Yeah, no, I think the proposal from Councillor Mary Holman wasn't to implement across the year on a proportional basis. It's more with each meeting, you'd have sort of the groups with 0 to 5 members would have 1 motion, and then 5 to 10 would have 2, and so on, according to the numbers decided. I mean, I've not worked that out because, but I think it is effectively, it's basing it on proportionality. It's just doing it in a slightly different way. rather than saying working out the proportionality as we normally would, which is the percentage that each group has out of the overall number of councillors. It would sort of just change that sum a little bit to have a range from 0 to 5 or 5 to 10. So there's no sort of material difference between that and the proposal 2, other than it may slightly affect how many each group have.
So first and foremost, thank you, Nick, because that's spot on. That's exactly what I was suggesting. And I think, you know, bearing in mind Councillor Howitt's comments here, I look at my notes from reading these papers to see 11 motions for one group, then down to 3, down to 2, down to 1, whilst it's politically proportional. I think sort of from a common sense perspective, that doesn't feel particularly proportional. And, you know, this making a decision like this, I mean, I think I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable with Councillor Howard saying Lib Dems in these situations, because I'm not trying to look at this from a party perspective, because we might be sat here now, but we might not be in that position down the line. And the point in motions, exactly as you've said, is allowing for other groups to have their say, to have their input, to get policy issues platformed. And I think it's really important, and this is sort of the spirit of what we're doing here, is trying to make it fairer, whether that's directly proportional as per democratic services, political proportionality calculations, which I appreciate can be very complicated things at times, having worked with them in a previous life. Yeah, I mean, I would like to propose that if we move with option 2, that we go for a threshold approach rather than a pure political proportionality approach that leaves 11, 3, 2, etc., as listed in the report. And what I will propose, so probably about this, I'm making a proposal. I would suggest, I would propose what I said initially. So your thresholds are 5, 15, and 35 councillors up to. So up to 5, you get 1. Up to 15, you get 2 for your group. If you've got up to 35, you get 3. And then if you've got 36 or more, you'd get 4. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Do you have a seconder for your amendment? Councillor Clark, thank you. I think we just need to have a brief discussion about how we're going to vote on this, because we've obviously got different options that people have proposed and seconded. And so we'll plot our way forward, if you know what I mean. Won't be a sec. Of course, yeah.
Thank you very much, Chair. And just making a comment on the proposal that was made and the remarks and the comments from Councillor Howard, because I do believe that Councillor Howard, you were talking up my option in the way that you're saying that we should, the proportionality absolutely gives the administration of the day a upper hand, because they have more motions, and it gives minor parties less motions. So having unlimited motions surely would mean that the Labour group or the Reform or Green or my group are able to put in however many motions we want that we believe are important, and we're not limited by doing so. On what we've discussed on the proposal that's been put in front of us, I fundamentally believe that proportionality isn't going to work in this kind of scenario, because even those numbers, so it'd be 3, 2, 2, 1, 1, that's still a lot of motions. We're saying that 5 motions is a lot of motions. If every group fills all their slots, which on those sort of numbers I'm kind of expecting they will, we are going to be having meetings that are going on until 6, 7 o'clock every single meeting, because we're just doubling the number of motions we're going to have. And I can almost guarantee that every group are going to try and fill their allocated slots, because why wouldn't they? Because it is their opportunity to have an impact on the agenda. So I fundamentally don't believe that there's a way that we can sort this out from a proportionality point of view. We either have a limit on motions of 5 and it's still the free-for-all that we have now, or we move to a completely open, unlimited number of motions. I don't think proportionality will ever work without extending our meetings for hours and hours and hours, because fundamentally that is what's going to happen. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Martin. I think what we'll do, we'll just pause momentarily just to work out what we're going to do in terms of debating and voting. I know Councillor Martin sort of started the debate a little bit, which is fine, and we will have an opportunity to debate that further, I'm sure. So I'm just going to get some advice from officers, and then we'll come back. what is best? Would you like to speak on this, Sophie? If you wish, that's
If
fine.
Emma's happy, I think we should decide if the amendment's going to be approved or not by the committee.
Want to take the amendment, the additional option?
The amendment to option 2, you need to make sure if everyone's happy with that.
Okay,
Or if we need to vote on that as a
need
separate.
to vote. Okay, the amendment on option 2. So it has been, go for it.
Can I just check whether that is an amendment to option 2 rather than an additional option? Because I think that's a difference, because making it an amendment, if that passes, that then rules option 2 out of contention totally.
Being proposed as an amendment, I would take it as amendment to it, and then that would take option 2 out of contention altogether. The unamended version.
So you need
Sophie, do you have a note of what the amendment is?
I think it'd be appreciated if we could have that clarified in writing by Councillor Damari Homan, what the changed wording would be. Okay, so I believe the amendment is up to 5 councillors would be 1 motion, up to 15 councillors would be 2 motions, and up to 35 councillors, 3 motions, more than 36 councillors, 4 motions. Is that correct?
yes, of course.
Does up to 5 mean 0 to 4 and 5 to 10 mean 5 to 9? Because that's what I heard said.
Good question. Do you want to clarify, Councillor?
So my view on this would be, so 0 to 5 would be 1. 1 to 5, yes, of course. If you could 0, you're not here, are you? Yes, 1 to 5 for 1, 6 to 15, 2, 16 to 35 would be 3, and then 36 or more would be 4.
It has changed, but I respect that we haven't voted yet.
Thank you. Emma is going to just come in at this point.
To note for members that if you're unaligned, you wouldn't be able to put forward any motions under this proposal, just so that you're aware of that when you vote, because you won't be in a group.
You could, provided you got a member of a group to second it.
As long as, no, it has to come from one of the group's allocation. You could second it, but it would have to come from one of the groups.
A trade in allocations going on.
So we have do you want to come in, Ross, or you comment?
Sorry, just for clarification on numbers. So therefore it'd be 2 to 5, because obviously under legislation, a group is 2 members or more. So it'd be 2 to 5, 6 to 10.
It would have to be 2 to 5, because a group can be formed with 2 or more members.
So that is perfectly clear to everyone. This is very complicated, isn't it? So we have an amendment to option 2, which has been proposed and seconded. So we'll take a vote on that. All those in favour, please show. And those against. And those wishing to abstain. So that has been defeated. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay, so we go now to the motion that Councillor Martin proposed. Is that correct?
If you're happy, Chair, we could just go through each of the options and people can vote in favour of them. So you go option 1, all those in favour.
We would do that as which option got the most votes would then be carried. Is that correct?
What Councillor Clark wants to.
Councillor Clark.
Can I propose that we vote we vote for each each options, and whichever gets the fewest votes gets eliminated, and then we can vote again on the remaining 2, essentially doing a proportional STV election.
Okay, well, we appear to have brought proportional representation to the county council. Single transferable vote or whatever is on list. Right, so can I see those who wish to support option 1, please raise your hand. So that has 2 votes. Oh, three. Sorry, my apologies. Thank you. Those in favour of option 2, please raise your hand. 1. And those in favour of option 3, please raise your hand. Okay, thank you. And the winner is?
Option 3 got 5 votes.
Do we then eliminate option 1 and
Option 2.
option?
And got 1 vote.
Oh, sorry, option 2 only got 1 vote. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So option 5, sorry, option 3 had 5 votes, which is more than an absolute majority. Well, okay, let's do that. Let's go one last time, hopefully. All those in favour of option 1, please raise your hand. 2, 3, 4. Thank you. All those in favour of option 3, please raise your hand. 5. Thank you. So option 3 is definitely the winner.
5 votes for option 3.
Thank you very much, members. That was very complicated, but appreciate all your patience and all your comments and questions. So, Michelle, did you want to go to the next part of this report
Yeah.
and just take us through that? Thanks.
If I can, that would be helpful. So the next section is public questions, and following discussion at the working group, we obviously discussed the issue of supplementary questions, and it was felt that that shouldn't be changed. So the proposals that are set out here from the working group are really a tidying up. So effectively, it brings public questions for council and committee meetings. It aligns them to 3 working days, and that does cause problems for the public at the moment because that can be confusing. It also allows public questions at extraordinary or special council meetings, and sometimes these meetings are about a specific issue which has significant interest for the public. So it is the working group felt that the public should have the right to ask questions. And the third point is clarifying what we do currently do at the chair's discretion, allowing the public to present their question remotely. The next section is on the Code of Conduct complaints procedure. We had the monitoring officer had a request from the combined authority regarding changing our constitution to reflect the issue of dealing with multiple complaints to different authorities over the same matter. And obviously that can cause a significant amount of duplication of the complaints process. The combined authority have already changed its constitution to reflect that, and we've brought forward the change here. And that's it, Chair.
Thank you, Michelle. Anybody have any comments on this part of the agenda at all? Anybody? Simon and then Rory?
Yeah, just a comment really, just to say, thank you. I know we debated about public speaking and public questions quite a lot, and really it's just a thank you for just reanalyzing this really and looking at it, because I think it's very important. A lot of people are passionate about being able to speak at council meetings. So just a thanks to everybody involved in, rethinking this and being so flexible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. Councillor Clark, Rory.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to make the similar point, so I'll keep it brief. I think it's good that we have as many people can come speak as would like, and I think the keeping the limit at 3 days allows people to come and ask timely questions. So I'll support that.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Just on the rest of the proposals in the report, I thought they were all very sensible, and I'm very happy to support them.
That's good. Thank you. Anybody else? Ross, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question for officers based on Appendix 1, which is the proposed form that we use for motions. Under does the motion point 1, it have a financial implication for the council. Now, obviously, any motion that goes in has a financial implication on the council inherently, because it takes officers time to do the work on the motion. Is there a notional point in when that becomes an issue. I'm just thinking, writing a letter to a government minister, which is very frequent at the moment, has a cost attached to it, but I wouldn't expect that to be a yes on this form. But likewise, if we were trying to remove £1 million from one reserve to another reserve, I expect that to be a yes.
Yeah.
Is there a point, and whose discretion is it to decide whether the financial implication requires that to be a yes or a no?
Chair, shall I come in on that point?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're really talking in relation to this point about something that will impact on the budget, the business plan and budget that's been agreed. So it's the latter point you make. If you're proposing something that requires a significant amount of funding, which is not identified in the business plan, the question is, where is that money going to come from? It's not about, it doesn't refer to the time it takes to check the motions. That's expected as part of our role, and or writing letters. It's literally the impact on the approved budget and business plan.
Thank you very much for that, Michelle. That clarifies somewhat. The only scenario that I have in my mind, for example, is if I go parochial about this, let's say I do a motion about Warboys and Astucleys, and I say the council should write to every resident in my division. Does that have is that classed as having a financial implication on the council, or is it not? Because the cost is not massive in that it's not more than £100,000, say, within our environment. Is that classed as a financial implication that I would require to tick yes or no? I'm just trying to work it out from my understanding.
I believe that would be a yes, because the money has to be identified from somewhere in order to achieve that. So just checking a motion wouldn't cause a financial issue, or just writing, the chief executive writing to a minister wouldn't cause a major financial issue. But if you're asking for a letter to be sent to everyone within Warboys, then the money has got to be identified from somewhere in order to achieve that. And that would be the question that the monitoring officer and the Section 151 officer would say to you. Where do you want to take the money from in order to achieve that?
That's very useful. Thank you, Michelle.
Or you could deliver all the letters yourself, and I mean, I could help you if you want. That's fine. Anybody else on these points at all? No. So we seem pretty happy with the rest of the report. I don't think there's any need to vote. We're happy to accept the recommendations. Yeah. Thank you for that consensus. That's great. So we'll now move on to item 4, which is the annual review of the Constitution. Nick.
Thank you, Chair. So this item, it's an annual report that summarises the changes that have been made to the Constitution over the past 18 months following approval by full council. There were 5 sets of changes over that period, as set out in section 2 of the report, which included a full restructure that was completed in February 2025. While not intended to reopen discussion on previous decisions that the committee and full council have made, it's here to provide the committee with the opportunity to assess the impact of the previous changes and raise any concerns that they may have as a result of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Any questions from members at all? No. So we're happy with the recommendation. Nobody wishes to dissent from that. Thank you. Item 5 is the Standards and Conduct Framework for Local Authorities in England, Government Response to Consultation. Emma.
Thank you very much. Members of the working group will have already seen these proposals that are before you today. This is a report for noting. We don't normally like to do that, but it is something which will impact on the working of the committee and how we deal with complaints. Members will be aware that this consultation has been ongoing for a little bit of time now, and the government are moving forward with proposals that change the standards regime. So in particular, members will be wanting to note the differences where there will be an option to suspend members. There will be an option to potentially suspend allowances. So those are big changes. With that comes review proceedings as well. MHCLG are working with a group of monitoring officers to refine the detail around some of that, how the review provisions will work, dealing with parishes as well. I think that's particularly important for any new unitary authorities as well. At the moment, the County Council doesn't deal with parish complaints. The District Council monitoring officers do that, but in the future, those will all be dealt with by the new unitary authorities. And just for comparison, another monitoring officer at a unitary authority was telling me they receive about 200 complaints a year from their parishes, which in my experience, having dealt with parishes in the past, isn't unusual. So there will be new processes around that, including an internal review and an appeal process from that. But really, it's just updating members on the changes and where we are in the process at the moment.
Thank you, Emma. Any comments on this at all from anyone? No? Richard, Councillor Howitt.
I'll try not to call you Tom. A lot of this is sensible. I think it's trying to ramp up the degree of scrutiny where there are breaches of the Code of Conduct, and we should welcome that. I don't think, from my personal knowledge, although I don't claim to have huge amounts of experience of this, but from my personal knowledge, I don't think there are particular problems in our own processes in the County Council, but I think all of these suggestions are welcome. I particularly welcome the idea that support is given to both the complainant and to the relevant member, and maybe that's something we could look at doing in advance. But yes, I welcome this report and the direction of travel.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else before we, Lawrence?
Yeah, just a quick question of clarification. Powers to suspend elected members for a maximum of 6 months. I assume that maximum is because after 6 months you hit your 6-month rule and would lose your seat. Is that correct?
Yes, and I also think it was something that was fairly consistent. Otherwise, I think that the government felt it was moving into completely removing the electoral mandate from that member, whereas 6 months seemed an adequate period of time to be able to suspend someone.
Lorna.
Yeah, I was going to raise that point also, but express my concern because I don't actually think I agree with the implications of what the monitoring officer said. A suspension for 6 months, if it starts at the point at which the member is told that they are being suspended, might just work if there were a meeting on the day after the final day, but then even then 6 months would be too late, which they could attend. Otherwise, it is effectively removing someone from office. But I think also that it would be very unusual for the member to have attended a meeting, a qualifying meeting, on the day before the day the suspension started. So a suspension of 6 months does effectively give someone the power to remove someone from elected office without the say-so of their electorate. And I have very major concerns about that. I can see that it might potentially, and that we have to acknowledge that there are some very, very serious cases of bad behaviour that need to be tackled. There are also some cases of slightly bad behaviour or even no fault, which are pursued viciously and vindictively by some authorities with a particular culture and ethos. And I worry about that. Rather than a 6-month suspension, I could see the sense in giving the power to require that the person concerned submit themselves for re-election, because I think then that does actually put the power back in the hands of the electorate to say, do you want this person or not? But I have very real concerns at democracy being undermined by someone who has been chosen by the public to serve them, being taken out of office by someone other than the person who chose them to be there. So I'm not as comfortable with some of the proposals here as some members may be.
Thank you, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. I share a lot of Councillor Dupre's concerns that if you have 6 months, you can time out because of that suspension, because the dates don't align for meetings. I think if there were to be a suspension time, there needs to be some sort of way to make sure that you don't time out simply because you've been suspended. I don't think that's what the suspension process is there for, nor the timing out process. And I think we risk putting ourselves into a position where one leads to the other unintentionally.
Emma's going to come in at this point.
Thank you, Chair. I think that's a very real concern for members, but I understand from government that that's going to be picked up in the legislation in terms of the 6-month disqualification that wouldn't apply in terms of a suspension. It wouldn't be able, at the moment, it's automatic if you don't attend a meeting for 6 months without a reasonable excuse and the council have excused your attendance, then it is a disqualification, a very hard guillotine on that. But with this, there will be a provision that saves that, that doesn't allow a suspension to be used in the same way, because as the members point out, it could be used politically, which isn't the aim of the stance regime.
Thank you for that clarification. Are we happy to note the report on that basis? Yeah, thank you. Right, moving swiftly on, item 6, which is a review of complaints received under the members' code of conduct. Emma again.
Thank you, members. This is the standard report I do on a quarterly basis to members, just in terms of ongoing complaints and new complaints received in. We do have a number of complaints under investigation at the moment, which members will be familiar with from previous reports. But in terms of the last quarter, there have been no code of conduct complaints, which I'm very happy to tell you.
Thank you, that's good news. Any questions on this or comments? No, thank you. So the final item is item 7, the agenda plan. Do any members or officers have any comments on this? Nobody, in which case, thank you, members. That concludes the meeting. Our next meeting will be held on the 3rd of March. Thank you for your time. Take care. I'm going to have a working party meeting, so don't all run off.